Handsomeguy has already taken Australia, New Zealand out of the running, now looking to take out Japan. Bold words from the returning champion, but I would expect nothing less from Handsomeguy. I am Robert Worthewing at the desk, joined, of course, by Raven, who is just at the table, but is magically over here. Raven,
I can do it all.
How was the table?
It was fantastic. You know, throw down one side, D2 on the other. What more do you need?
I actually don't know how to answer that, so I'm not going to try, but we are going to get right into this
I also like
matchup.
you too, Rob.
That's all I wanted. We're going to get right into this match, though, and when we look at these lineups, a lot of similarities in classes, but, and I think very telling, one brings Hunter, one brings Rogue. Raven, do you think the stylistic choice necessarily represents these players' approaches?
Yeah, I think so. I think something that's maybe undervalued when you're preparing for a tournament overall is actually just taking decks that you're comfortable with and you just overall like the general play style, as opposed to picking what you think are just the most powerful and going with it. Because if that's not really what you're feeling, then you might not just play as well. But I'm kind of rooting for the Hunter myself. I think it's going to be good.
I was going to say, it's hard for us not to root for the Hunter, but Handsomeguy just saying this is going to be easier than his match against Joan. And, you know, taking that quote and really breaking it down, Handsomeguy actually had an incredibly close series. Obviously, we casted that one against Joan, went to Game 7, came off the back of that swipe off the top. Obviously, he had put himself in that position to win, so to take nothing away from Handsomeguy, but I don't know. Do you actually foresee this series being easier for Handsomeguy?
I think it really does depend on... This is just a confidence game to me, because we saw GundamFlame be a little bit nervous, make a few plays that weren't the best, and he even said himself he wouldn't have made the plays if he looked back on it. And Handsomeguy is super confident, quite relaxed again. He is already going to be at BlizzCon, so it puts him in naturally an easier state in terms of playing the match. But if GundamFlame can keep the pressure down and just sort of relax a little bit, I think he's got a pretty good chance, actually.
Yeah, actually, you know, spoke to him a little bit at the hotel last night, and as we were both going back up to our different rooms, he mentioned the fact that, you know, he actually felt very confident, assuming, to your point, he could kind of keep those nerves in check and make sure he was making the best possible play, because even though he comes in here with the narrative of kind of being he's the classic aggro player you don't want to run into on ranked play, he is a very intelligent individual, and you know, when he breaks down the reasoning behind his plays, he does so in a manner to where you can tell there's a lot of thought that goes into it, and he's not just a brainless aggro player as we tend to be.
Wow. I wouldn't have included me in that, Rob, but sure.
We all float.
Okay, fair enough. But yeah, I completely agree. I think GundamFlame's easily got what it takes to win this series. It's just he just has to keep control of his emotions more than anything and just don't let it get to the bear of him.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about these decks and how they line up against each other. As I said, when you look at the classes, essentially the same lineup, you know, major difference, of course, being Hunter and Rogue. But even when you look at the classes they have in common, on one side you have Control Warrior, on the other side you have Dragon Warrior, you have Aggro Shaman and Mid-Range Shaman. Do you think there's a clear edge just in terms of lineups for either of these players?
I think so, yeah. I think Handsomeguy Rogue is going to be, you know, I feel like in terms of lineups in matches like this, there's always a deck you feel like if you get the win with it, like maybe early on, then the rest of the series lines up really well for you. And I think it's going to be the Rogue for Handsomeguy, but if he's going to get a win on one class, you know, the Rogue is the one he's played the most by far and he feels the most comfortable on. So he's got a good chance. But in terms of just raw lineup, I feel like GundamFlame could really punish that choice.
Yeah, GundamFlame actually feels confident that his lineup is better than Handsomeguy. And you know, when we talk about comparing lineups, it's something we tend to do a lot as casters, but it's not as if you can just hold them up next to each other and just go down the line and be like, oh, this beats this, this beats this, because of the way the decks end up being queued and certain, you know, decks having that advantage. But I actually think the Rogue might be a little bit of a weak point for Handsomeguy in this matchup because of how aggressive the lineup is coming in from GundamFlame.
Yeah, I think the benefit is, though, Handsomeguy Rogue is a little bit off in terms of the deck building, so he has the Swashbucklers, has the Hucksters as well. So he has actually built his Rogue to do better against the more tempo and aggressive-based decks. So there is that. He's not playing just standard Miracle Rogue that can potentially have the weaknesses of just getting burst down early. But when GundamFlame is running multiple aggressive decks, you know, to do that more than once is going to be a little bit rough. If he loses one, he's still not going to have a great chance against the others.
Yeah, real quick, we just want to let you guys at home know we are currently working to solve a minor tech issue, but we will be getting into the game pretty shortly here. Speaking to that, the odd variant of this Rogue deck, considering most Rogues are kind of really buying full into the Miracle plan, which has the Cold Bloods and those cheap spells and the ability to deal burst damage. To your point, he has Swashbucklers, Undercity Hucksters, and we have seen thus far they haven't really made an impact, at least in the first series for Handsomeguy, because he wasn't running into those aggressive decks. But yeah, I have to agree with your point here. When we're looking at this lineup, there's tons of room for those cards to really shine, and I want to say again, this is actually a really solid deck, I think, for laddering at the moment because it deals so well with aggro.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's really cool. And for a player like Handsomeguy, who's choosing decks and classes like Rogue that are very, very heavy on the decision making, and the second you slip, it could be a huge problem. And we talk about the minions in terms of being able to trade with the early aggression from other decks, but there's also the spells you get off them as well, which again just require another level of decision making on. You have to be very adaptive in terms of working with what you got in hand.
Yeah, Handsomeguy and I spoke about, the spells you get off of those cards at times, and he actually told me that when he plays in ranked play, what happens fairly frequently is he'll be playing against hunters, and he'll actually just get Call of the Wild, and then just prep into it on turn 5, and he said that's usually just his plan. Now what he wants to do is just get Call of the Wild off of hunters and just use it on 5, and he says that usually wins the game on turn 5.
I can imagine if Call of the Wild being at 8 mana was too strong, I feel like a turn 5 Call of the Wild is a little bit ludicrous.
Yeah, I feel like it's a little strong. Another deck contrast that I want to point out is when we look at the Tempo Mages, obviously they're both running Tempo Mage, and that is a deck which has kind of out of nowhere become really popular in the tournament scene over Freeze Mage, which has kind of suffered, although Yulsig, did advance with it. The lineups, or the way the decks are actually built, so GundamFlame's deck is built pretty much 2 of every single card, except for Yogg-Saron and Thalnos, but he really values that consistency. Also not running Babbling Book, which is a card which has shown up in most of these decks and is kind of a staple at this point.
Yeah, I feel like the choice mainly for GundamFlame for the Water Elementals is really cool because they're just such sturdy minions. They get the job done against weapon classes as well, with the potential to just freeze out their face and really cause huge issues, with the 6 health just being a problem, health total for most classes to deal with in one go.
Right, and as you guys see, we are into match number 1, day 2 of the Asia Pacific Summer Championship, and we are going to be watching Rogue versus Tempo Mage. Now, this is a matchup, obviously, I have a lot of experience with. If you ever watched the So You Think You Can Cast video, I was on the losing end of this, but...
I have seen that video once or twice, believe it or not.
Such warm nostalgia. Swashbuckler in the opening hand. Let's see what Handsomeguy gets in Flame Waker. If there was any spell, really any mage card, I would say, that as the rogue you want to get, I think it's Flame Waker.
I heard rogue can combo multiple spells in a turn now and again.
You may have heard correctly, and what Swashbuckler and Undercity Huckster do in terms of your mental state as the opposing player, you know that Handsomeguy has one of your cards. He has one card from your class, and you just begin sitting there going like, okay, what is it? What is it? What is worst case scenario? And like I said, I think Flame Waker may actually just be worst case scenario because Rogue, to your point, so many cheap spells.
Yeah, it's really going to be cool to see how Handsomeguy utilizes the Flame Waker into this deck now. And already, though, we're seeing the deck building just straight away come in. And, already we might see even as a stroke of genius at the turn 1 into the Swashbuckler, into Huckster. Already, GundamFlame has a pretty reasonable opening hand for Tempo Mage. You wouldn't be too unhappy with this at all. But he's already on the back foot straight away. There's for some reason the rogue is pressuring him with minions from turn 1 and 2, as opposed to normally the other way around of like a Mana Worm opening, for example.
Right, and what this means is that GundamFlame kind of has to figure out how much he's going to expend into kind of taming this board to protect his minions. Now, Twilight Flamecaller is another pretty solid pickup, I would have to say. Obviously, Arcane Explosion on a 2/2 body for 3 mana. Do you think that's going to be relevant in this match?
I think it could be, because it's just like almost playing a third Fan of Knives to a certain extent, so just going to help with the addition of the AoE effects there. But so far, we're just going to see the Flame Waker get that use. GundamFlame probably a little bit upset. The Flame Waker backstab turn 3 play from the rogue player. So this is the kind of craziness that Handsomeguy is going to mess around with in this deck because of Swashbuckler and the Huckster as well.
Right, and it's one of those things where when you get those spells, when you get those minions from your opponent's class, you have to sit down and kind of figure out how that plays into your total win condition. And the thing is, Rogue's already so flexible, and the people who are playing Rogues have such an acute understanding of the fact that, look, there's a bunch of different ways the game could go.
Yeah, exactly, and it really just always is managing resources to the highest extent, whereas in some other classes it's a little bit more straightforward in the decision making, but we did see GundamFlame able to quite easily deal with the Flame Waker, and now he has the maybe slight frustration that he wants to kill this Tomb Pillager, but also getting his Water Elemental down this turn would be fantastic.
Yeah, you brought up Water Elemental, and I agree. This is one of those minions that ever since the original incarnation of Hearthstone has hung around, constantly peaks into mage decks because it is so powerful. 3/6 for 4 is a great stat line, but I kind of feel like this is like infested wolf territory almost, where you put it down, you feel like there's like a good chance this is coming right back into your hand. So I kind of wonder how much he's going to necessarily value it here. If he feels like he can just leave the Tomb Pillager up, not give him the coin immediately. Again, not sure you necessarily just want to play that down.
Yeah, I think the frustration here is nothing else fits too well. There might even potentially have been a fireball come out just to kill the Tomb Pillager and leave the 3-2 on the board as well, and just try and continue the pressure like that. But GundamFlame did decide that this was the turn he can just squeeze in that Cabalist Tome and try and get the value going forward. So this is the way Tempo Mage has been played more often recently, as opposed to its older incarnations, where you actually can afford to play the game a little bit slower and then really cash in on your value cards like Tome later on.
Right, does just play down the Cabalist Tomes, though. Gets these spells. I don't know that that's really what he was looking for. One thing that GundamFlame can enjoy in this moment is he now knows exactly what 2 cards Handsomeguy had gotten from Undercity, Huckster, and Swashbuckler, but that Tomb Pillager just going to quickly do a pretty good amount of damage if it can't be handled.
Yeah, and just yet again, it's another turn for GundamFlame where I feel like there's nothing feels too great at all. You might even just see the Elemental and maybe even the Thalnos put down to just continue cycling. He can use the Thalnos and the Explosion to deal with the 2-2, but it pretty much just tickles the Tomb Pillager at this point, so it doesn't really deal with that minion either. So kind of an awkward turn overall. It looks like he's actually going to fireball down the Tomb Pillager. So he didn't make this play last turn because he wanted the value from the Tome, but now he's been forced into it.
Yeah, speaking of awkward is your usage of tickles when it comes to Hearthstone. I don't know if you've been tickled a lot while playing Hearthstone, but I'm very concerned in the way you bring this up. Just wanna put that out there.
Yeah, you say this and no one else can see except me, but you are smiling while saying this, so I think you really enjoyed it. Well, this isn't a complaint, guys. This is he wants me to say it more.
Neither here nor there, but yeah, he does choose to use that Fireball to get rid of the Tomb Pillager. Now, if he'd been on 7 mana, I think Flamewaker, Thalnos, and Arcane Explosion would have been something that felt really good, because the odds of you clearing that Tomb Pillager are pretty good. They basically have like a 50-50 on that one, but it would have felt like you had better chances to regain control of the board, and Tempo Mage wants to be the one pushing the agenda, and yes, later on, technically, it can go long, but there is no Archmage Antonidas in this, and really there's no healing. There's just basically that ice block.
Yeah, which is going to be good as well, because the fact that he got 2 secrets, he's got the Effigy and the Ice Block, because you get them from cards like Tome or even potentially, Babbling Book normally in the list, so on, it really makes your opponent have to think about playing around every single secret, because it could be any of them. There's no like set piece secrets you use in this deck anymore, so it's going to raise some questions, but Handsomeguy is actually just going to raise the question of, can you even deal with this much pressure on the board? The second Tomb Pillager, going to get the 6-6 Van Cleef, and even the 2-2 just chipping away there.
Yeah, and going wide on the board feels really good. You're playing around the potential of a polymorph off of that Cabalist Tome. On turn 7, yeah, Flame Strike, I guess, but it doesn't deal with Van Cleef. That's the entire turn. You get a coin, and looks like it's just time to go for that play I talked about before, which is Explosion, Thalnos, get those bolts off of the Flamewaker, and we'll see where they go. And no! Wow. GundamFlame had a talk with the team beforehand. He's like, what do we do? Go face.
Yeah, and he said he didn't go face as much as he wanted to yesterday. And now his Flamewaker's doing it for him, but this looks like it is just going to be game, I believe, as there's the Eviscerate in hand as well for the perfect kill without even having to use the dagger. And Handsomeguy, yet another strong performance with his Rogue. Not a surprise, but let's look at it. Turn 1 Swashbuckler, turn 2 Huckster, Mage on the back foot from turn 1.
Yeah, Handsomeguy is definitely making me a believer with this particular deck list, and yeah, able to contest the board early, force the Tempo Mage onto the back foot, and really nothing he could do. He was just sitting there trying to use spells to get ahead, and then those minions coming out, pushing the damage, and a really easy game from Handsomeguy, and thus far living up to the expectation that this series was going to be easier.
Yeah, it's a really textbook already, and getting the Flamewaker off the the additional effects as well was really cool. But yeah, it was a really strong win for Handsomeguy to start off the series.
So coming into this, Handsomeguy feeling extremely confident, and why wouldn't you?
Yeah, I mean, he's performing very well so far in this tournament and in this series, 1-0 up, and he got the win with the Rogue, which, as we discussed before, might have been the weaker point in the lineups overall. You can see the bans on the screen there, so Handsomeguy cannot play his Shaman, which was a mid-range variant, and GundamFlame can't play his Dragon Warrior, which, again, is so many players are favoring the Control Warrior style. I actually still think Dragon Warrior is just a very solid deck, and, fits in with GundamFlame's playstyle in general.
I'm a little bit surprised by these bans. To be completely honest, I would have expected GundamFlame's Aggro Shaman to get banned out, and maybe even the Control Warrior from Handsomeguy to get banned, and it kind of seems like the bans are a little bit reversed, and Dragon Warrior hasn't necessarily had the best time, but we're going to go ahead and hop into game number 2 here. It's going to be GundamFlame's Mid-Range Hunter versus Handsomeguys Control Warrior. This Control Warrior generates a ton of armor. You know, I'm sure people at home have seen this list, but just in case you haven't, generates a ton of armor and has basically the trump card at the end of Yogg-Saron.
Yeah, and I think in this matchup overall, GundamFlame's going to be feeling pretty reasonable, especially because it's got a pretty decent opening with 3 2-drops in his opening hand, along with the Animal Companion that just gets even more powerful when you play it with minions that are already on the board, because suddenly there's not just one threat, there's multiple, and there's a chance of obviously Leok giving the instant buff. But starting off with the Kindly Grandmother, one of the new cards from Karazhan, and also kind of unusual because it has what's in the past the opposite general death rattle effect. Normally big minions death rattle into smaller minions, but this one is a 1-1 that death rattles into a 3-2, so kind of awkward to deal with for any removal classes. They really have to think about how they interact with the board. But Fire War Axe, pretty good start for Handsomeguy as well, just going to kill off this Toad, and this hit from the Toad could be very important. Potentially, yep, there we go, gaining an additional draw for Handsomeguy. So now that Acolyte at least drawing 2 cards.
Yeah, very heads-up play by Handsomeguy to make sure he gives himself the opportunity for that. And yeah, GundamFlame kind of looking at that and not feeling as good.
Ooh, I like the trade. Yep. Because if he doesn't trade the Acolyte, what it also does is set up the ping, the hit onto the Grandmother, and then the clear up with the weapon as well. So the trade there from the Huffer was really nice and just keeps the death rattle on board. Makes it, again, just more and more awkward to deal with going forward.
Yeah, we see that one copy of the Brave coming down, and that's going to be enough to pretty much stop the offensive, although Deadly Shot, pretty good draw there.
Yeah, but even though, you know, Deadly Shot being used on Bloodtooth Brave might even look like a necessity at this point, so GundamFlame is going to go for it and keep the Grandmother alive, but it did pretty much just pull out the Deadly Shot from the deck. It was just on a 4-drop, so any of the sort of bigger threats later on, or even anything that Yogg may generate, is going to be a problem. And wow, okay, that's actually a pretty big deal now. That kind of just needs to be dealt with, because this bow draw on the turn was incredible. The freeze to the Hunter face on the turn he draws the Eagle Horn bow that would have been able to trade into this 2-6 with the Grandmother as well. Actually incredible.
GundamFlame probably just has to trade here. Like, you just have to. You have the bow. But gosh, rolling 2 Huffers in a row and trading them both, like, is there no justice in this game?
It's okay. The first Huffer kind of traded to face with the War Axe.
It did. It did ultimately hit face, but
yeah, that was actually a really good roll for Handsomeguy there, and managed to just delay the bow, and also just having the bow not activated because the double turns as well.
All right, can he get that effect twice on the Acolyte? He does, so that is 2 extra cards basically handed to him by Huge Toad.
Yeah, this is rough now because of the armor generation Handsomeguy's been able to gain. He's not under too much pressure, and he's not under minion pressure. The Grandmother's a great card, but he's still only chipping for 1, and Handsomeguy might just be like, look, until I'm going to be able to brawl, I'm just going to let this hit me for 1, unless there's a Houndmaster come down to going to buff it up to present some more reasonable damage. And it's just a card, a little bit off time, not quite on 6, but hey ho, he's got the time to be able to play it, and now he's going to be tanking up going forward, and 2 shield blocks in hand as well.
Yeah, there's one place you basically never want to go as the Hunter player. It's to the Grand Tournament. You usually want to stay away from that place. Not friendly to you, but I want to point out the statistic now. That Acolyte of Pain, or those Acolyte of Pains have generated 4 draws and basically soaked 7 points of damage from the 1 hit from the Huffer and then from the bow charge. So we see 2 Call the Wilds in hand for GundamFlame, but honestly, Handsomeguy has to be feeling pretty comfortable still.
Yeah, I mean, these Call the Wilds are the saving grace for GundamFlame at the moment. He has been just sort of put in check almost every single turn throughout this game so far, but Call the Wild into Call the Wild's a pretty powerful combo. We can see there's only 1 Brawl available, but Revenge and Ghoul as well for Handsomeguy, so there is options to help clear out the second one that we can see so far. But GundamFlame pretty much needs these Call the Wilds to get some work, because if these 2 cards are cleared up, I think that's just going to be game.
Well, Handsomeguy, you know, as someone who's coming into this saying this match was going to be easier than yesterday's, who feels supremely confident that he's going for a repeat performance back to the finals, I hope he realizes that those 2 cards could just be both copies of Call of the Wild. I'm sure he'll play around that, but in terms of what GundamFlame has in hand, this is actually just worst case scenario for Handsomeguy, and has to be careful how he uses that Revenge here, how he uses the Brawl, if he chooses to use them, because he would be putting more power on the board. And to your point, that Leok from Call of the Wild can do massive damage as a result. Yeah,
and this point now, where Kindly Grandmother was a little bit, not really piling on the pressure early on, Now, with the Call of the Wild, this is when the damage starts to kick in, because they're awkward to deal with. And now we're going to see Handsomeguy use a Ghoul to proc them in preparation for a brawl. But we are now about to see Huffer, Buffer, and Tougher hit the board.
Huffer, Buffer, I like that. That is, I've never heard that, and
really?
I like that. Is that a little bit of the Euro step here? Like, what is that? I like
just,
it.
You know, it's just bringing the flair a little bit.
Whew.
But yeah, it's going to be so much damage, and I actually just think GundamFlame needs to slam Call of the Wild. And guess what, Rob? You should go face.
That's a line of play we can all get behind, but I like what Handsomeguy did there, because even before he popped the Kindly Grandmothers, he just generated a bunch of armor. Shield block, tank up, and he's like, okay, I'm on 27 health. Even if Call of the Wild comes down, I can deal with it with the Brawl. I can deal with it with the Revenge if it truly gets low enough, and Revenge sometimes acts like a soft, third and fourth Brawl against a lot of boards, so I do like that play.
And what's really nice here is the turn lines up very well for Handsomeguy, and the fact that he can Brawl. And at worst, if Leok or Nisha survive, he has Brawl and then Bash, Blood to Ica Bash if they survive. So he can clear the whole board no matter what happens with the Brawl.
Right.
And still gain armor from the Bash, which is definitely going to help.
Did you want to just more armor? You got more armor.
Always.
Yeah.
Always more armor.
I do like the fact, though, that GundamFlame did not play into the Revenge. So he gave himself really one more situation, understanding that he has that second Call of the Wild, to basically get around if there was no Brawl. But yeah, Brawl definitely in there and going to get tidied up pretty evenly.
Yep, we are going to see the Bash used, but, Handsomeguy again, just having there was no way an enemy minion would survive this Brawl, which is really good for him, because unless another Call of the Wild comes out, you've got to think with this hand, the shield block, again, as you mentioned, Ironforge Portal coming off the top there, so much armor generation that once 2 Call of the Wilds are gone, because we've seen no high mains hit the board yet, because they're the ones that build up the power, right, and build up the damage before you finish the game with Call. So if these can be dealt with by Handsomeguy, which he is now on 12 health, so the Revenge is going to be huge, especially combined with Bloodtaker, and now a Shield Slam. Could have even used Execute, who cares?
Oof, this is a rough spot for GundamFlame to be in, because he was basically, when he made that Call of the Wild, or when he played it, he was like, all right, obviously when I hit face, I got to do damage. The window is closing rapidly, but you're putting him on 12 because of the Leok effect on Huffer, so Revenge is going to come out, and it's just all kinds of worst case scenario, and interestingly, he played the Bat there, and that would have made his board a little bit weaker to a second Brawl, and it obviously plays into the Revenge. But I think he's just kind of at the point where you've been laboring kind of for a bit here, which is, I just got to do the damage.
Yeah, you just have to go, because, again, if the first call gets used, the second call is the only thing you can really win off the game with that Dire Wolf in hand. There's just not a lot you can do. If that was a high main, then you can play your turn a little bit differently. Play the high main first, use hero power, and then go into the second call. But just limited choices from GundamFlame.
Yeah, both Call of the Wild's gone, and Handsomeguy on 20 HP with the ability to just inherently gain 4 effective HP per turn.
Yeah, okay, so he needs to quick shot into high main to really have a chance here, I feel. Let's see.
Right.
Needs to be high main. Same response. It's okay. It does some work, because if that was, anything less, to be honest, than a Houndmaster, I guess, you just wouldn't pile enough pressure onto the board. But there's just Gore Howl, Shield Slam, and we saw how comfortable Handsomeguy feels after the call. He used Execute to effectively deal 1 damage as he executed the Leok, just to remove it off the table last turn. So he's feeling very good. Get the Gore Howl down, and now GundamFlame knows that any minion he plays is going to die from the Gore Howl next turn. There's not really anything in the deck that's higher than 6 health, so
if
really
you are
GundamFlame,
though, the only saving grace you kind of have is you realize that Handsomeguy is low on cards, so maybe it just means he's sitting on, I guess best case scenario for you would be Yogg, maybe a Blood to Ica, something not like Ironforge Portal, basically, or a second shield block.
Yeah, I just feel like the Gore Howl just seals the deal, because, again, look, he has Tundra Rhino, which is a great card, but not when your opponent can just kill it and take 2 damage. What's the point? I think he needs to hold on to it.
Yeah, maybe able to pair it with something like Infested Wolf, just really anything.
Yeah, anything, yeah.
It's unfortunate that he couldn't pair that with High Main. That would be a solid turn. But
yeah. Oh, he's going to play it. So what this Rhino's done is, combined with the hero power, it's dealt like a sort of net 2 damage, because there's going to be another hero power now. So effectively dealt, it's going to deal 6 damage if he uses the Gore Howl to kill it. But he's just getting 2 damage off the 5-drop. Like, it feels pretty horrible when your opponent's just going to armor up. And now Ironforge Portal, again, as you mentioned, just going to further seal the deal. And hey, his Gore Howl's going to grow if he uses that tank up again next turn, which pretty sure is the control warrior. You kind of like that tank up button.
Yeah, Handsomeguy just able to unleash the beast. And Houndmaster falls flat as a draw. And GundamFlame has to, I'm sure, consider what possible ways there are that he can even win.
Yeah, he's basically working out how many turns it's going to take him to, how many turns he has to draw a high main. So he's going to decide one. And next turn, there's a chance of high main into Houndmaster, which is why he's keeping the Houndmaster on the board. As he knows his minion just dies, but now with Sylvanas down, Houndmaster into high main is not really the option. There's even the chance of a high main steal. There we go. So he did get it, just one turn too late, as he just can't really Houndmaster.
Yeah, high main. I mean, showed up a little bit late to the game today, and unfortunately, to your point, once it comes down, once taunt goes on it. There's only one thing Handsomeguy can hit with the Sylvanas, so yeah, have to imagine GundamFlame is going to see the writing on the wall relatively quickly here.
Yep, don't really think he can go for the... Is he just dead if he doesn't play the Houndmaster? I'm not sure. What attack is the 7? Oh, it's 17's 1 damage off, lethal, with the tank up to buff the Gore Howl as well, so...
Just bullying him now, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I think Handsomeguy, without the threat of Call of the Wild, the only thing to bear in mind is there's 2 kill commands that haven't been played, so there's a potential 18 damage that can be done with 2 cards next turn from GundamFlame, but there we go. It's just going to be the double slam, hit face, shield slam. Steal the high main and say, get out of this game, GundamFlame.
Well, Handsomeguy like, that's a nice cat. I think I'll take that cat.
Oh yeah, the ghouls are better draw than the shield slam, of course. Yeah. You played your high main, he was on the turn, on the board for a turn, and now he's mine. There we go. Concede, not too much of a surprise, and I think the main factor in this whole game just stemmed from early on, as you mentioned, getting 4 draws from those acolytes and soaking up the damage. Just got the warrior so far ahead, and GundamFlame just could not really stack up the pressure that the hunter needs to early on, and high main just rocking up far too late means double Call of the Wild wasn't even enough.
Yeah, dodge the high mains there, and I think when we look back on this game in particular, we'll have to evaluate, was trading into those acolytes really worth it at that point? GundamFlame's aggressive style got him to this point, and yes, he is here, but for how much longer? Down 0-2 against Handsomeguy.
Yeah, it's really not looking good for him in the long run. We talked about his confidence as well being a bit of an issue, or at least his nerves, and this is not a good way to get over nerves. You just get pretty much just smashed in the first 2 games of the series by Handsomeguy, who is pretty much one of the favorites to win the whole thing. So this is a little bit rough there, we can see. Not looking too great. A little bit of a difference in the both players' composures here, and GundamFlame is really going to need to pull it out of the bag here.
Yeah, the demeanor is just worlds apart. GundamFlame obviously really thinking, how do I get back into this? How do I get back into this? Probably trying to balance some very intense emotions, whereas Handsomeguy think, I wonder if where I want to eat is still open after this.
Yeah, he's just working out, when he's going to leave, when he's got his trophy. He can just hang out afterwards.
Will there be enough time to watch, what he wants to watch on, say, Netflix before he goes to bed?
Yeah, Netflix has been down, actually.
Oof.
Not good. But we are into the next game. Handsomeguy on the Tempo Mage versus GundamFlame's Face Shaman.
Yeah, so GundamFlame realizing that Handsomeguy has to get the win on Tempo Mage now and Malagos Druid. So he has a little bit more context in terms of what he wants to queue up next, basically, to deal with it. Decides that, it's just time to get aggressive, and this is truly the only deck in his arsenal that is a true aggro deck anymore. We tend to see Zoo kind of sometimes qualify, although it's more board-centric and has fallen off, but this is the deck that just comes to get things done. Yeah,
exactly. There's normally very one direct route. I think the only difference in playstyle ever happens is when it's the aggro shaman mirror, and then you really battle for the board. Very similar to the Zoo mirror, but in this, it's going to be wanting to be highly aggressive. Going to wrestle the board a little bit, depending on Handsomeguys opening. We do see his Babbling Book into Mana Worm, and the Babbling Book giving him a mirror image as well is going to help stall that aggression out from GundamFlame.
Yeah, I was going to say, in terms of what you could have gotten off the Babbling Book, this doesn't necessarily deal with the 3-4, but it really slows down the Totem Golem's ability to actually do anything to the board.
Yeah, and also gives the Mana Worm time to actually build up and become a threat of its own. It's going to be a real boy soon. Be able to start beating up other minions instead of just sticking around at a 1-3.
I think Mana Worm is probably the minion I've heard the most complaints about from pro players in terms of being just terrifying. You see it on the board, and you're just so afraid of how big it can get. And this was even before Tunnel Trog, right? So Tunnel Trog and Mana Worm obviously function very similarly in terms of overall capacity. But,
it's the fear factor of it's a 1-drop as well. It's not like there are other minions. You look at, say, Fandral, for example, that is a minion you have to kill because you're terrified. But that's turn 4. You've drawn some cards by then where it's like Mana Worm on turn 1 is like, oh no, what do I do?
Fandral's a future problem. Mana Worm is a very real problem on turn 1. And Plays down the Argent Squire, GundamFlame does, just trying to go ahead and reclaim the board so that he can start asserting his own agenda. Handsomeguy has some choices now. Could just play down the Thalnos, get these spell-boosted Arcane Missiles, or could draw cards. Decides to go ahead and do that.
Yeah, I like the card draw there. He needs to keep ahead. Nothing really... If there was a Frostbolt in hand, then maybe that would change the outcome, as you could stall the Totem Golem and be able to ping it the following turn unless a Healing Totem came down. But I like just keeping the hand size up. But we can see that this Ardent Squire is going to remove the shield and remove it. And this is actually great because this avoids problems along the lines of Flame Tongue, getting great trades with the Rock Biters, all cards we can see in GundamFlame. So really nice play from Handsomeguy, like really quite high level. A lot of players would not just go, oh, I've got, my 3-attack minion to trade into a 1/1.
Right, because of the way Tempo Mage plays, you could get to the point very easily where you're like, okay, I can be the aggressor here. I had the aggressive start. The problem is that Tempo Mage doesn't really curve out nearly as well as Aggro Shaman does, and when you're playing against it, you essentially have to act like it's Zoo. You have to constantly respect the minions on the board and try to minimize that as much as possible. So right there with you, I really like what Handsomeguy is doing here, and he's continuing to just put down these little problems for GundamFlame.
Yeah, and GundamFlame's got the option to put down a big problem now with the 4-mana 7/7 that is Flame Wreathed Faceless, although I do think they should change the name of that card to just 4-mana 7/7. I feel like it's referred to as that much more often than its true name.
I was going to say, I oftentimes don't know what a Flame Wreath Faceless is, but I am very familiar with a 4-mana 7/7.
Yeah, and we are going to see now with the totems actually surviving, so Handsomeguy couldn't kill the second minion on the board past the Totem Golem. Means he's going to get some value from Flame Tongue. Spirit Claws is going to be equipped, not buffed, because there's no spell power on the board, but being able to chip off that Thanos.
Yeah, and for the first time now, GundamFlame has taken the board, and Handsomeguy is in one of my favorite 5-mana Tempo Mage turns. Do you play Kabbalah Stone?
It's a tough one. It might be one. Oh, God, this is actually kind of rough. What can he do? I actually maybe even think Arcane Intellect with Arcane Blast and Missiles is okay. Try and take out the Flame Tongue. Because if you play Kabbalah's Tome, you're just taking a hell of a lot of damage next turn and just passing initiative over with, for the Shaman to just play more minions, pile on more pressure. But the Flame Tongue is such a threat. Look at its 4 damage at the moment it's presenting, and you need to get rid of it at some point, or it's just going to stack too much. For GundamFlame to be able to really just push and pressure out the game.
Yeah, I think whatever he does, it needs to involve Arcane Blast in some capacity, and dealing with that Flame Tongue totem. You obviously can't play down the Drake. You can't play the Kabbalah's totem. So I think I like your line here of just going for that Arcane Intellect, seeing what you get, but going to take his time on this turn, as this is a very, very swingy turn. This actually could just be the turn, realistically, where he loses his matchup.
Yeah. Oh, okay. This isn't the first time we've seen this. Oh, my.
The punish! What is worse when playing Aggro Shaman than 1 Kabbalah's Tome? 2 Kabbalah's Tomes.
And then we know the next draw is going to be the second Kabbalah's Tome that is actually in the deck list itself. And GundamFlame just saying, hey, if you want to play a 5-mana spell that effectively passes your turn, I'll play my 7/7, continue the pressure, and now suddenly Handsomeguy on 14 health. This is a worrying situation for him, and we might see GundamFlame start to battle back for this board.
I think worrying situation is the mildest you could have put it. This is a, oh God, why is this happening? Everything around me is on fire sort of
Yeah,
moment.
I mean, Handsomeguy went for the risky play, and, it didn't pay off quite, frankly, and there we go.
Handsomeguy like, okay, you got this.
Yeah. I'm getting out. What's kind of funny as well is GundamFlame actually just had 2 Maelstrom Portals in hand, so he could have even just cleared off the mirror images from Handsomeguy if he played them, so it wouldn't have done anything.
Yeah, I talked about this a little bit yesterday, that I do not like Kabbalah's Tome. I understand why you bring it in a tournament setting, but that card is just so slow, and unfortunately, against a deck that is as high octane as Aggro Shaman, you're basically never going to find time to play it.
Yeah, and I think just the not having access to Frostbolt or Fireball, to be honest, early on was a huge problem there for Handsomeguy.
The specter of defeat in the Winter Championship season may still hang over the head of Handsomeguy, but at this point, he's up 2-1 and has to be feeling pretty good about his performance thus far in this championship.
Yeah, 100% is in the first semi-final of the day. And even in that game, you know what? Sometimes Aggro Shaman just kills you. Sometimes it happens. And you just need to get over it.
I mean, look, that's why you bring it, right? You just bring it and you're like, hey, kill someone.
Yeah, and I think Handsomeguy going to feel pretty confident. He's still got his Tempo Mage, of course, and his Druid left. And Druid, an extremely flexible deck in the form that Handsomeguy brought. And, really does normally shine in such heavy decision-making that you're pretty confident you can get a win with it if you think you can outplay your opponent. But for now, it's going to be the Tempo Mage Mirror in terms of style, but not exact deck lists.
Yeah, so GundamFlame's definitely running the more consistent list. As I said earlier, 2 ofs of every card that he could have 2 ofs of. Obviously, you cannot carry 2 copies of Blood Mage Xelnos in your deck or 2 copies of Yogg-Saron, but everything else, which is very streamlined. No Firelands Portal, which has kind of become, I think, a staple, a one-off in that. And, you know, that's pretty much it. Just once you get to Yogg-Saron, and the 2 Cabalist Tomes are there, give a little more gas and control matchups, but...
Yep, when we see a Cabalist Tome in GundamFlame's hand. But again, pretty good opening for him. He has the Mana Worm and the 2 drops of the Apprentice and the Sorcerer. But Handsomeguy not looking too bad either with his own Apprentice and a couple of cheap spells to deal with. So the Frostbolt and the Fireball being used to actually just really gain you tempo going forward is going to be pretty useful for Handsomeguy here.
So GundamFlame choosing to play down the Sorcerer's Apprentice over the Cult Sorcerer there. And I'm curious, do you necessarily buy into that, or would you just play down the Cult Sorcerer?
I think with the idea of using Arcane Intellect next turn, and then the Cult Sorcerer making cards along the lines of Arcane Missiles and Arcane Blast free, then you can really, you know, like gain some huge tempo swings with that, being able to just cast free spells. So I don't mind the Apprentice here, because I feel like you kind of want the Sorcerer for combo-based moves later on in the game to remove some of the bigger minions from Handsomeguy.
Sure, I'm buying it. It's one of those situations where you have to believe the Sorcerer or the young Apprentice is, Sorcerer's Apprentice is probably going to die, but I like to dream big, so that's good.
Yeah, and also it means, you know, you as you said, you ask Handsomeguy the question of, well, if you don't kill this is a huge problem, because it gains so much value in the following turns that it's alive, and he is going to leave it up and choose to Frostbolt down the Mana Worm, so doesn't want the Mana Worm to really run away with the game, as we mentioned in the last series, it has the potential to do.
Yeah, going ahead and getting rid of that. Now, he had the opportunity to take a line of play where he had pretty good odds, I believe, to get rid of both minions, but playing it pretty conservatively thus far, and that's interesting to me considering how aggressive this matchup can get very quickly.
Yeah, what's kind of funny is, though, by not playing a minion, it meant the potential value of the Sorcerer is actually lower, because you can't react with spells to minions, so it's kind of a strange interaction there by not presenting targets. Make it even worse, and that is a very, oh my god, okay. I was going to say that is a very aggressive Arcane Missiles, but if the 2 pings from the Flamewaker clear up the minion, then who cares?
Give that Flamewaker the Oscar for best dramatic performance. I was on the edge of my seat. I was like, oh, it's a Sorcerer. Are we just going to, nope, doesn't live, doesn't die. Just dies in the end.
Yeah, and then we see the power of the Cult Sorcerer again, just the extra spell power, making much cleaner kills on the minions, and that Flamewaker did a great job, but he was ushered swiftly off the stage after collecting his Oscar.
Yeah, just takes his bow, takes Frostbolt to the face for his troubles.
He wasn't even allowed a speech. Yeah, he had it prepared. He worked on it all night, didn't sleep, and then it's just straight off the board.
I'm pretty sure we've all heard enough of what Flamewaker has to say.
Agreed. 100% agreed. But now, GundamFlame is going to continue with the slight initiative of now he has the Drake on the board, and Handsomeguy going to have to work how he wants to deal with this, and I actually just like Mana Worm Fireball.
Yeah, it's very clean. What I don't like here is playing Cabalist Tome.
He might do it, though. It's turn 5, and you have it in hand.
No, he's going to go ahead and take the safer road.
It's
here.
the power, it's the spell damage, right? You know, that's the problem again. Arcane Blast, and then even Frostbolts, Arcane Missiles could just prove so many more problems, even if there's just +1 damage on those spells.
Now, with the second Sorcerer's Apprentice in hand, GundamFlame has a pretty long list of options here in terms of what he wants to do. Could go so far as to, Forgotten Torch, the Mana Worm off the board, draw some cards, play the free Mirror Image. That's interesting to me. Actually choosing to hold the Sorcerer's Apprentice and just use the Arcane Intellect, draw some cards, play the Forgotten Torch. Although, realistically, when you looked at what was in his hand, it wasn't necessarily like he was getting too much value out of the discount.
Yeah.
And now with a clean board, I do like the Cabalist Tome play.
Yeah, it's going to be able to just get him ahead in cards. And also, as you said, there's no pressure on the board, so he doesn't need to react to anything yet. And it's really, really funny where I feel like both players are trying to bait out minions and removal from each other, so in a very careful game.
A very careful game indeed, Raven. Baiting is a great term for what is going on there, but goes ahead, just plays down the mirror images. So obviously these represent no threat, but they're just kind of on the board. Another spell that plays into Yogg-Saron and gives GundamFlame the heads-up message like, all right, if you play something, it has to get through this before it can hit me.
Yeah, and it just, as you said, just delays their minions being able to hit there and start pressuring for damage. Now we see Water Elemental in both players' hands. They're not going to hit the board quite yet, and that's a really good minion in this matchup because Fireball is the only thing that really much lines up with the Water Elemental's health.
Yeah, GundamFlame could have chosen to build a wall of his own there, and we could have had, a little bit of wall warfare going on, but chooses not to.
A very boring one.
Yeah,
They're just looking at each other.
I gotta say, in general, this match has been very non-explosive. Maybe that's about to change here with the second Flame Worker coming down, but both of these guys playing very civilized tempo Mage Mirror.
Yeah, and the Roaring Torch already in GundamFlame's hand, so not too long ago, if you recall, he played one of his Forgotten Torches and already got effectively a 3-mana Fireball in hand combined with his other one, so this is looking really good for him. Is he going to use the more expensive one now, as it just builds into his turn a lot nicer and save the cheaper one for more of a dramatic effect later on in the game?
Right, doesn't have a pressing need to play down the mirror images, so just go ahead and fit in that 4-mana Fireball, and wow.
Yeah. This is why the spell power minions are so important in matchups where you want to just really efficiently trade with minions. Arcane Blast is so powerful. And I do like just using the second one and then going into missiles.
Yeah, just go ahead and get that full clear.
You don't need to mess about.
He is starting to run a little bit low on options now. The Water Elemental is there to be played down, sure. Spellbender, I think Spellbender's actually probably better in this matchup than it is in most. But even then, it's not necessarily that powerful.
Yeah, I think it's good because a lot of the spells are actually just targeted burn spells, or to be used as removal, which we've been seeing throughout this whole game. It's a very board-centric style both players are taking, with neither player being able to use the option of actually being highly aggressive, then just burning your opponent down to finish up. So I think Handsomeguy, although his hand is getting quite low, he has the Water Elemental, he already has the Drake onto the board, and then with the Spellbender, he's just another card that's going to help him get more value from his minions that are already there doing work.
Right, and obviously, anytime you play a Mage spell, or sorry, Mage Secret, there is the added value of your opponent has to play inefficiently to basically figure out what it is, because Spellbender is obviously one of the best case scenarios on what it could be.
Yeah, and look at this from GundamFlame. He did use his own tome there. Got a Fireball, a Violence Pole, and a Vaporize, so a lot of fiery death in coming out of that tome there. But Vaporize is going to be pretty nice. To your point, just saying that when the Secret's played, you've got to think about all the options, and so far, there's only an Azure Drake on the board, and a huge Babbling Book now. I wonder if Handsomeguy is even going to attack with that Babbling Book on the board. He's going to go for it, and the swift nod, yes, it's Vaporized. But if he didn't go for it, he could potentially lose 4 damage for nothing, which is a bit of a problem in itself.
I like Handsomeguys' expression there. Kind of frowns a little bit, like looking at the Drake, like, yeah, sorry, buddy. Someone had to get in there.
Someone had to prod the Secret. And also, to be honest, he's so experienced. A lot of players that have, are so comfortable in this kind of environment take a lot of the more uncommon outcomes in the game in their stride and actually be able to just deal with it and not be too fussed. It's like, yes, he could have tried to do something funky about the Vaporize, but even the Babbling Bug probably would have been pinged the following turn, and it's not like you want to use your Elemental to die anyway, so I think it was fine for Handsomeguy. Like you said, he had to test the Secret regardless.
Yeah, and obviously Vaporize and Spellbender are essentially the 2 most uncommon secrets to ever pop up in decks. From the original set, but GundamFlame ready to go off on this turn. He has the potential to do a lot, and that Spellbender could actually be pretty big here.
Yeah, I wonder if he plays around it, because he could with Arcane Blast.
Oh, if he goes with the Portal, this could be a big win.
This is the second best option than Arcane Blast for no reason, because he still gets the minion. Whereas if you just Fireballed it, then there's a problem, because you just Fireball a 1/3. Proves a big problem. So although the Elemental is still alive after this, he has gained the Bishop now, but the 3/6 on the board still has to hit through the tokens. But never mind, Handsomeguy isn't even going to bother. The 2 minions can attack, so we know the Taunt minion has in fact gained some form of buff to be able to attack him. Wow, Thistle Tea into 3 of the Cult Sorcerers. Pretty crazy.
Yeah, this Yogg so far is looking like one of the more convoluted ones, and it's just follow it as it goes along here. Dogs wearing hats. Savage Roar. Ooh.
I mean, this could just be game.
GundamFlame just kind of scratching his head. Can't really blame him here.
Yeah, the 17 damage, 18, 19. Oh, now that's been reduced down. Okay, there isn't quite enough. But it was very close to just actually killing him that turn, which is scary in itself. But more importantly, the board is intact for Handsomeguy. GundamFlame doesn't really have any good options. Has he even got enough burn to even think about killing him? I don't believe so. A 26 for Handsomeguy in terms of health. And GundamFlame has not pressured him enough. But hey, if you need something to come back from a Yogg, it's a Yogg. It's only weak to itself. It's so powerful.
All right, we're going to bow before the God of Death for a second time. Darkbar.
Oh.
Wow. Well.
Very mixed results. A 1-1 and a Yogg. Okay, the taunt's not going too bad. Hand of Protection would like to be on the Yogg. Does get it.
Healing Touch could be big if it hits him.
So many minions on the board, though.
Nah, healed the Water Elemental. What a guy. What a guy.
Yeah. Oh, Swipe. Definitely going to help clear up the, well, Adog at least. Ice Block. Oh, my. So if GundamFlame got the Ice Block and then didn't throw away 2 of his burn cards, then that could have been huge, actually, because there would have been the hope that he survives additional turns, can just kill his opponent, because Handsomeguy, never mind with the rest of my thought, Handsomeguy just has Polymorph that I actually kind of missed in hand to be able to deal with this Yogg Saron and turn him into a little sheep.
You know, you get what you get. That's what, you know, life lessons.
Sage wisdom. Sage wisdom. You, guys, you get what you get. Deal with it.
Sucks
and then
to
the glasses
suck.
just come down.
Yeah. No, it's hard to feel bad for Yogg Saron most of the time, but yeah, gonna go ahead and just pop the block. And, you know, I can't really fault you for missing that Polymorph, as there was a lot going on in that sequence. But yeah, GundamFlame has 1 more turn, no more Yoggs, basically out of burn, and I think that's going to go ahead and spell a 3-1 deficit for the Japanese player.
Yeah, that's going to be a rough one for GundamFlame. That Yogg from Handsomeguy, exceptionally powerful. GundamFlame's wasn't too bad either, but throwing away the burn, which at that point was GundamFlame's only way to win the game, was to just completely burn out his opponent in a turn or so. And the Ice Block gave him a chance, but throwing away the cards you need to win is not normally a good idea. So yeah, Handsomeguy with another victory and 3-1 ahead. He's going to be feeling pretty confident. Only need to win with his Druid.
A burgeoning scene is coming to life more and more every month, and not looking great, though, unfortunately, for GundamFlame in this tilt.
No, he has a long way to go to be able to pretty much just reverse kill with all the decks he's got left, as Handsomeguy only needs to win with his Druid to take the series and go into the finals of his second... What, is that third finals?
Yep.
His third finals, so for every single season, he has made it, or potentially made it to the finals of the championships. And to be honest, it's just a testament to consistency and just his, you know, sheer skill of the game, because a lot of people like to mess around and say, oh, Hearthstone, it's very difficult to be consistent and it's almost impossible. But players like Handsomeguy, players like Dr. People just prove that wrong. And to get into these kinds of formats and get this far consistently is incredibly impressive.
You know, Raven, I didn't call for a speech, but that was a good one.
Well,
Thank you.
You know,
I
just like to splash it in there.
Now, we're going to go ahead and see the Hunter queued up against the Malagos Druid. And, you know, the one benefit GundamFlame does have is understanding exactly what Handsomeguy has to play. And this gives him a little bit of an advantage. And Hunter is pretty much the deck in his lineup that is tailor-made to beat a deck like Malagos Druid that wants to take its time.
Yeah, especially with the opening he's got as well, he can start to just pressure. A little bit unfortunate for him that the Living Roots come down. It's one of the better opening tools you can use against Hunter to just trade in, especially with the hero power. It does really well versus kind of Grandmother, because you just hero power into the 1/1 and then, you know, just trade into the 3/2 with the 2 tokens. So that's kind of nice there, just to save some health. But GundamFlame does have a bit of a follow-up in himself. Just dropping the Direwolf this turn. Not going to go for this slightly weaker play of the Fiery Bat off curve, or doesn't really need to coin out the Horse Rider either.
Yeah, heads up play from Handsomeguy, realizing, you know, he doesn't need those Living Roots to do the combo damage here. There's going to come a point where he either survives the Hunter's Onslaught or he doesn't. And then once he does, you know, he gets up that Ancient of War, uses those Moonglade portals, Feral Rages, gets out of reach, he'll win the game right there. He doesn't necessarily need to save it for the Malagos damage. And to your point, it's far more effective to basically patrol the board early on.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure GundamFlame is already planning to save that coin for the high main, as that's one of the big guys that he's going to put the pressure on, as you said early. Because Druid, if they're under too much pressure and require heavy removal every turn, but they just don't have it available to them. So you can really put the pressure on as the Hunter, and I imagine we are going to see the Bow come down this turn, and then coin high main to follow up with. Bow, very clean way to deal with the Maya Keeper. Saves the Divine Shield on the Horse Rider. As I said, continue that pressure in time for the high main turn.
Yeah, when you're down 3-1 against a guy of Handsomeguys caliber, you're going to need the help of the King of the Jungle, so...
Yeah, definitely. And it's just such an awkward minion. Druid struggles with removal anyway, and then when that huge minion drops two other minions onto the board, it's going to be a little bit rough to handle in one turn at least, so you're almost guaranteed to at least get value from the hyenas.
Is there a single... Well, okay, I guess Hex and Polymorph are really the only effective counters.
Yep.
Savannah High Main, but what a powerful card, and have to agree, it's just going to be coming down, and then if that High Main goes onto it, you know, Mulch suddenly becomes a reasonable play against. But again, you're leaving those hyenas behind. The Hunter is still pressuring. So we're going to see Emperor Thor's Hand come down, and I think this is actually, in this context, a pretty solid hand to get discounted.
Yeah, I agree. Just being able, making the removal cheaper just so you can do more of it in one turn is always great. And now he has options for himself for Ancient of War and Wrath in a turn, which is huge, just to be able to take down one of the smaller minions. Barnes is available for Gundam, but as I said, just needs to be high main this turn, and I think it's pretty good for Handsomeguy that he managed to get the Emperor down. Because if there were no threats this turn, and he just ramped, suddenly the board is too much to deal with, where at least that soaked the bow and the Divine Shield, or more importantly, just the attack from the Horse Rider to stem the damage a little bit, was super important there.
Yeah, so Handsomeguy can play down the Ancient of War and then also the Wrath to not only cycle a card, but get rid of this Horse Rider and remove the possible outs for dealing with Ancient of War. And this also plays around the Houndmaster pretty well, because the Houndmaster does not make the Savannah High main big enough to actually deal with the Ancient of War. Yeah,
this is one of the really good counter minions as well, because, as you said, it pretty much requires like a kill command as well as the high main attack. And it means that the high main actually just dies as well and leaves it. So, you know, with the trade without the buffed health, so he's actually just going to Houndmaster and potentially not even trade.
Yeah, I think in this situation, and GundamFlame really has to think this one through. Again, he is facing elimination. This is his last gasp to try to get back into the series. Give it time to think it over, but I actually think I like just doing the trade here.
Yeah, because the second the minion gets dealt with, there could be, you know, mulch into swipe, for example. Then you've just lost the way to deal with most of the health on the Ancient of War. And the times I've like made similar plays in the past, you kind of always regret not doing the damage, because the Ancient of War is a big guy with 10 health. And doing most of that and just leaving a 2 health sort of requirement from GundamFlame, especially because he has Unleash the Hounds just to help with that extra damage, is going to be pretty good for him there. So let's see the Nourish come out from Handsomeguy, probably for card draw at this point on 8 mana. You don't really need to ramp too much. He does have options such as Living Roots to deal with what's left of the high main at this moment, and even just a Feral Rage to finish off the Houndmaster as well.
Right, and obviously by making that trade with the high main, suddenly mulch is really not appealing at all. You're just going to finish it off with, you know, one of your lower damage removal spells, a Wrath, a Living Roots. In a true emergency, I guess Feral Rage. Obviously, you don't want to do that, but mulch is pretty much off the table now. So Handsomeguy is kind of in a good spot right now. He's actually soaked up a lot of the aggression from the high main, and you know, we're getting to that point now where GundamFlame is getting into the window. It's like, all right, it's time to start having Call of the Wild, or else you're going to be in a big problem because Handsomeguy has been allowed to draw so many cards.
Yeah, and if you can deal with this board state without using the mulch, it opens up options for mulch to become, instead of a sort of big guy removal tool, more of a tempo card. So if you just drop a minion, it's like, oh, just mulch. It's 2 mana, especially because it's been reduced. You just pay 2 mana to take a minion off the board, and it's almost like sap to a large extent. And Druid would very much like sap as a card.
I don't want Druid to ever have sap. That just
no one does.
Terrible.
It's just the Druid player does, though.
Sure.
And even the Arcane Giant being drawn by Handsomeguy means, if you look at his hand, he's got a lot of spells, not a lot of threats. But now with just the Arcane Giant, it can be very difficult for them to deal with outside of a deadly shot. So he does have the option of dropping that down and, you know, presenting a threat himself to the hunter.
Right now, this would be, I think, a pretty great turn if you had 8 mana. But GundamFlame has 7, and it's basically hero power and witch card. Barnes out that high main. You know it's in there. You know you're going to draw it.
Yeah, it's a pretty good skill to be able to Barnes out high main. Something I actually,
I was going to say, I watch your stream.
So that I actually pride myself on. I'm sure Soto would agree as well. He's seen it happen in person multiple times. But I think I actually... it depends exactly how his deck's built, how many pieces got to come out. Because oh, that's not too bad. Because what you want to do is put a threat on the board, even though it's a 1-1. And Tundra Rhino is one of those threats, which it will need to be dealt with this turn. The only problem here is this potential of the beasts being cleared up, which then means Houndmaster is less effective next turn. So I wouldn't have even minded the Wolf, because it's unlikely to be fully cleared, to then get Houndmaster and then use the damage straight away.
Well, and looking at what he can do next turn, he can guarantee value on the Houndmaster, even if the entire board gets cleared. You can just go ahead, put down the Infested Wolf. He can Houndmaster it. So I definitely agree that on that turn, I think Infested Wolf was probably the single strongest play. Thinking of what he has for his next turn with no Call of the Wild in hand, he probably has to be kind of a little more geared towards what he's doing in the future. Yeah,
but there's always a chance that, let's be honest, if Barnes gets high main, then you're feeling pretty good about life. You know,
like,
that is one of those plays that will win you the game. And, you know, don't blame GundamFlame at all for going for it. And he still has plenty of follow-up. And this is where we're going to see the mulch, just to say, less of, you know, I'm dealing with a huge threat, to just 2 mana get off the board. and deal with it. And the minion coming off this much is actually going to be pretty important. Ooh.
Do you believe?
That's not bad.
Do you believe in Onyx Bishop miracles?
Yes, definitely.
I don't.
There are so many good cards he could bring back.
Well, unfortunately, Handsomeguy in this turn has cleared most of GundamFlame's board and also taken the initiative. And wow, this turn just became a lot more complicated, especially when you're staring down 16 damage and you're on 20 health.
Yeah, this is actually super tough.
You could take a safe route where you Houndmaster your Hyena and just start like clearing off 2/2s, I guess, but that's not going to win you the game. I'm not even sure there's any sequence of cards he can put together in hand that win the game. You have Unleash the Hounds, so you can generate 4 tokens. You could go for the Onyx Bishop play along with that, but I mean, he hasn't played any minions that have taunt.
Yeah, this is so difficult, actually. I think the game will be decided on how this turn plays out for Gundam and going to be Handsomeguy's response, because the game is pretty much on a knife's edge at the moment, and there are multiple good plays he can make. He might choose to say, I'm going to play high main. If you can't kill me next turn, then I'll probably win, or you have to very much focus on the high main to clear it up. But it looks like GundamFlame has gone with the Unleash, and I'm pretty sure he's... Oh, okay. I thought he was going full face there, which suddenly becomes a little bit risky because the dogs, although fill the board, don't actually do enough damage. It's not like he puts them in hero power range next turn, and Malygos
Not quite
into
lethal.
Moonfire is just out, so GundamFlame doing the trades saved the day.
Well, we've seen him do a lot of trading up to this point, despite, what we've kind of come to know about him as a person. And in this situation, it saves his life.
Yeah, and actually, there's no response from Handsomeguy to a certain extent where he's on 10 health and the board is so wide. Never mind, swipe from the Wild Growth. That is how it is done, and that might actually clear up the game here because there is no chance of a Houndmaster onto the high main, which was the highest chance of actually dealing with this Arcane Giant. That swipe was huge.
Yeah, it might have been a wide board, but it was a wide board basically constructed of tissue paper, and Swipe just mows it down.
Yeah, that was pretty rough for GundamFlame, and as I said, that might spell the end, but I think the play he did of actually just going very wide and saying, if you don't have Swipe, you either need to very weirdly trade into this board, or I'll kill you. There needs to be an answer, and at one point, Handsomeguy was in a very tough position there. Now he's looking pretty good, and I think... Is there any world in which you just don't kill this Hyena with the 2/2?
Well...
Okay, so the idea here is Deadly Shot, right? So,
yeah, I was thinking Deadly Shot's basically all that gets him out of it.
Yeah, he needs a minion to be able to deal with or at least give him a good chance with Deadly Shot, but we can see that is not GundamFlame's hand, and pretty sure he just has to go with Wolf into Houndmaster here just to try and stop this damage from the Arcane Giant. But it's not going to be enough with Malygos and Moonfire in hand to aim it at the Wolf, clear it off, and then another swipe as well, why not? But yep, the Arcane Giant, the one threat that Handsomeguy could pull off early on, just put in so much work, and no Deadly Shot from GundamFlame means that he is going to lose this game and lose the series overall. Handsomeguy is going to the finals.
GundamFlame has been eliminated, and with him, Japan's chances of advancing to the finals. Handsomeguy will advance to the 3rd straight regional finals. Again, 2016, maybe not in the West, but in the rest of the world. It's all about Handsomeguy and the consistency. Look at this bracket. Beats Joen, beats GundamFlame today, and he is already going to the World Championship. Flurry and Yulsik have to be ecstatic for what this means to them. Whichever one wins the next series is just going to the World Championship. And look, you're still playing for the money, you're still playing for the title and the prestige, but that is so much off the back of those two players. And Dan is actually standing by with Handsomeguy to get a few words for him after his victory.
Congratulations, Handsomeguy. 3 championships for Asia Pacific this year, and all 3 championships have had you in the finals. That's already a great accomplishment. What's going through his mind now that he's finally achieved that?
네, 이제 아펙 챔피언십 3번째 결승에 올라오셨는데 지금 소감이 어떠신가요?
이제 뭐 다시는 깨지기 힘든 기록을 하나 거의 세워가는 것 같아서 너무 기뻐요. 이제 마지막 단계만 남은 것 같아요.
Yeah, I feel pretty happy because it's pretty unbeatable record so far. I only have one more step to go, so I'm pretty happy.
Oh, that's good. He's not satisfied yet. That means he's going to go in the grand finals and try to be the first person to win 2 championship seasons back-to-back.